Alex, I've spent 30 years mastering the grain of white oak. I can tell you how a piece of cherry will react to a chisel just by the smell of the shop. But this little plastic toaster, it hates me. It actively conspires against my happiness.
Haha, Tiger. I've never seen a grown man so intimidated by a machine that basically works like a hot glue gun on a robot arm. What happened to that perfect calibration cube you were bragging about yesterday?
It has transitioned into its next phase of life, which apparently is a bird's nest made of PLA. Ask me how I know that you shouldn't walk away from the printer during the first 5 minutes.
Oh, I know how you know. I saw the blob of death sitting in the trash bin. It looked like a neon green tumor.
It was a heartbreaking sight. But here's the thing nobody tells you about 3D printing. The hardware is only half the battle. The other half is essentially an exorcism of physics. Today, we're diving deep into the world of troubleshooting these mechanical nightmares. Because whether you're a pro or a beginner, your printer will try to fail you.
Let's start at the beginning. The first layer. Every forum I read says the first layer is the make or break moment. Why is it so temperamental?
Because it's the foundation. If your first layer doesn't stick, the rest of your print is just an expensive way to create a plastic tumbleweed. The biggest culprit? Bed leveling. Or as I like to call it, the infinite quest for flatness.
Wait, hold on. Most modern printers have auto bed leveling now. Didn't that solve the problem?
That's what they want you to believe. Auto leveling is great, but it's compensating for a crooked bed. It's not magic. If your nozzle is too high, the filament won't squish. It just sits on the surface like a piece of wet spaghetti. If it's too low, the nozzle scrapes the bed and nothing comes out. You're looking for that golden squish. Not too flat, not too round.
And what about when it sticks in one corner but curls up in the other? That's warping, right?
Exactly. Warping is the heartbreak of the 3D printing world. It's usually a thermal issue. Plastic expands when it's hot and contracts when it cools. If the edges of your print cool too fast, they pull away from the bed. It's especially nasty with materials like ABS.
Okay, so how do we fight physics?
A heated bed is the first line of defense, but sometimes you need chemicals. In the old days, we used a slurry of ABS and acetone, smelled like a nail salon, and a gas station had a baby. Nowadays, glue sticks, hairspray, or a PEI sheet. PEI is a game changer. It grips the plastic when it's hot and releases it when it's cold.
But even with a heated bed, I've seen prints that look like a duck's foot at the bottom. Everything is wider at the base.
That's elephant's foot. It's basically when the weight of the print presses down on the first few layers while they're still too soft. Usually, it means your bed is a few degrees too hot, or your nozzle is just a hair too close. It's the 3D printing equivalent of wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small.
Let's talk about the ugly prints, the ones that finish, but look like they've been through a war. I'm talking about stringing. It looks like Spider-Man tried to make a birdhouse and gave up halfway through.
Stringing and oozing, the bane of every maker's existence. This happens when the printer moves from part A to part B, and the plastic keeps leaking out of the nozzle.
So, it's like a leaky faucet?
Precisely. The fix is retraction. You're telling the motor to pull the filament back a few millimeters before the move. But here's the thing nobody tells you. If you retract too far or too fast, you'll grind the filament into dust, and then you've got a clog. It's a delicate dance between temperature and speed. If you're too hot, the plastic is too runny. If you're too cold, it won't extrude properly.
What about those little zits or blobs on the surface? They're always in a vertical line. It looks like the print has acne.
That's the Z-seam. Every time the printer finishes a layer and moves up to the next one, it has to start somewhere. That start point usually leaves a tiny mark. Most slicer software tries to hide it in a corner, but if your settings are off, specifically your coasting or wiping settings, it becomes a visible scar.
Coasting? That sounds like what you do on Friday afternoons.
Close. Coasting tells the printer to stop pushing filament just before the end of a line, using the remaining pressure in the nozzle to finish the path. It's like letting off the gas before a stop sign. If you don't coast, the extra pressure creates a blob at the end.
Okay, let's go for the critical failure category, the layer shift. You come back in the morning and the bottom half of your print is fine, but the top half is an inch to the left.
That's a hardware soul crusher. Usually it's a loose belt. Think of it like a bicycle chain. If there's too much slack, it skips a tooth. If the printer skips a step, it doesn't know it's lost its place. It just keeps printing in the new position.
Or the motor overheated.
Could be. Or, and ask me how I know this, You left a pair of pliers on the guide rail.
Haha, you didn't.
I did. The print head hit the pliers, the motor groaned like a wounded animal, and the rest of the print was offset by 3 inches. I basically printed a very expensive, very plastic failed art sculpture.
We've talked about the machine and the software, but what about the material? I've heard people say filament can go bad. Is that just a myth to sell more plastic?
I wish it was. PLA and especially nylon are hygroscopic. They drink water from the air. If your filament is wet, the water turns to steam inside the 200-degree nozzle.
Steam?
Yeah, it pops and crackles. If you're printing and you hear a little snap, crackle, pop, you aren't making Rice Krispies, you're ruining a print. The steam creates bubbles, which lead to under-extrusion. Your print will have tiny gaps, and the layers won't bond. It'll be as fragile as a graham cracker.
So what's the fix? Do I put my filament in the oven?
Do not put it in the kitchen oven. Ask me how I know that one. Unless you want your house to smell like industrial mistake and have a puddle of melted plastic on your cookie sheet. Use a dedicated filament dryer or a food dehydrator. Keep your spools in dry boxes with silica gel. Treat your filament like good cigars. Keep the humidity low.
One more scary one for the beginners, the clog, when nothing comes out at all.
The dreaded cold pull is the solution there. You heat the nozzle slightly, let it cool just enough so the plastic is solid but still pliable, and then you yank it out like you're pulling a sword from a stone. It brings all the burnt bits of carbon and dust out with it. It's satisfying in a very gross, earwax removal kind of way.
It sounds like 3D printing is 10% creating and 90% being a detective.
It really is. But here's the thing nobody tells you, that frustration is where the skill lives. When you finally tune that retraction and you get a bridge that spans 4 inches without a single sag, or a first layer that looks like a sheet of silk, there's a level of satisfaction that you just don't get from buying something at a store.
Because you didn't just make the object, you tamed the machine.
Exactly. You and the machine came to an agreement. It stopped trying to burn your house down, and you stopped cursing at its motherboard.
So, what's the one takeaway for the person out there who just unboxed their first printer and is currently staring at a pile of plastic spaghetti?
Don't change 10 settings at once. In woodworking, we say measure twice, cut once. In 3D printing, I say change one thing, print a test. If you change the temperature, the speed, and the flow rate all at the same time, you'll never know which one actually fixed the problem or which one made it worse. Patience is the most important tool in your shop.
Well, and maybe a filament dryer, and a leveled bed, and some hairspray.
Haha. And a very large trash can for the spaghetti.
Thanks for the deep dive, Tiger. I think I'm ready to go home and try to tame my own plastic beast.
Good luck. And remember, if it starts smoking, that's not vaping. Turn it off.